It's funny because he tweeted on the day that Crazy released, like online, I pooped. I think that was his tweet. He told me at the rap party for Heist, he goes, hey, we do another one, I definitely want you in it. You know, it's funny, Mark actually wants to turn Crazy into a feature.
Crazy is an award-winning short film that spent the majority of 2020 being screened at festival after festival until finally being released to the public through YouTube and Vimeo on the 27th of November 2020 for all to gaze at. Production for the film started as far back as August of 2020 after the director of Crazy wrapped up his time working for this tiny itty-bitty project you may have heard of called A Heist with Markiplier. Coincidentally, it was through the rap party of Heist alone that Markiplier himself hopped on board to help with making the dream of Crazy become a reality.
There's actually a short film that I helped produce. Like, all I did was I helped fund it.
Now, while yes, Markiplier was indeed the executive producer of Crazy,
I'm in it.
And even had a cameo in it,
I have to poop.
This story isn't about him. Instead, we'll be shifting our attention over to the director I just mentioned a few moments ago.
Penis size!
This man is none other than Holt Boggs.
Holt Boggs! Everyone, you need to know the name Holt Boggs.
What a
Holt,
dude.
What a man.
A veteran of the film industry and someone who has been a part of it for over 25 years.
I've been acting for 22 years or whatever, and 25 years, Jesus.
However, something you may not know is how he's recently begun to dabble with more daring projects where he's at the helm, starting off with his directorial debut of Crazy. Recently, I got to chat with him about what it was like to produce such a riveting short. Moreover, we also got to talk about what it was like to be pulled into the vortex of Markiplier's creative pursuits and how it impacted his life, work, and future. And finally, near the end, I was even given some exclusive details regarding what Holt plans to film next. And hint, Markiplier has something to do with that. It may even be connected to the movie that Markiplier is currently filming, so stay tuned as we go over some facts and speculations about that too. What's it like for a new filmmaker to enter the space with all eyes on him? What's it like to be associated with the well-known YouTuber's universe of shows? And what's it like when that same YouTuber helps you out with your own film? Well, I'm glad you asked. Without further ado, let's dive into the story of Holt Boggs. Before we get to dissecting Crazy, I believe it's important to explain just why it is that this short film is so special. And for that, I think it's best to hear from the director himself. If any of you haven't seen the film yet and want to go into it with blind eyes, I've linked it in the description below, so you all should definitely go watch it right now and then come back to this video later. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. It's only 10 minutes and it'll be a heap of fun. Again, this is the last call for spoilers before we break it all down.
Crazy is a bit of an offbeat film. Admittedly, it is a little different from the norm. It is technically a comedy by content, but it is played 100% like a thriller up until the last few minutes of the film.
And that's when she gets crazy.
Yeah, the meeting with two men. Stanley is a high-powered mob boss. Now, Stanley is distraught. He just got the news that the woman he loves might or might not have lost her virginity to a man who he believes has a significantly larger penis.
Holt has a normal penis.
How was the process of reaching out or being reached out to for In Space with Markiplier?
Well, that actually came out after Crazy. We started working on it after Crazy. I was in a project he had called A Heist with Markiplier. That's where I first met him. And then after that, like, you know, and how Crazy came together was we were at the rap party for A Heist with Markiplier. And we have a scene in there that came across really well, and we got along really well. And at the rap party, just, you know, I'm having some drinks and stuff, and he just asked me what I'm up to. And I tell him I just booked a commercial, blah, blah, blah. And, oh yeah, I'm trying to direct my first short. And he's like, oh, what's it about? And I told him, and he was like, dude, when are you going to do it? And I said, well, I need to, you know, get some funding together and so forth and so on. He's like, well, let's do it. And the conversation was literally about that long. And, you know, and so I was like, you know, I glassy-eyed, like, what? Yeah, and it was so great. He flew down from Los Angeles to be on set and to help me out with production and to shoot the film and be in it. And so then when Space came by, he told me at the wrap party for Heist, he goes, "Hey, if we do another one, I definitely want you in it." So he just texted me and says, "Hey, I'm doing another one. I'd love for you to come out and be a part of it." I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, I owe him so much for Crazy, and like I love Mark to death. He's one of the best human beings I know. So yeah, he asked me to be in space with him, and he lets me play and just be an idiot, and applauds me for it. And so yeah, it's a ton of fun. So yeah, that's it just kind of came off of Heist in our relationship. So.
So, starting off with Crazy, how did the idea come to you, and how long did it take for it to like actualize in your mind?
I've been wanting to direct for a while, but I've been kind of scared about it. It's everybody thinks that they can make a good film, even people that make garbage. And there's this whole thought process that, just go and make something and just accept the fact that it's going to be garbage and just go from there. And I'm like, but I don't want to make garbage. So I really kind of shied away from it for a really long time. And then what happened is I was trying to, when I decided, fine, I'm gonna do it. I wanted something interesting. I've been doing several spots on television and that kind of thing, kind of generic roles. And I really wanted something that was kind of different and interesting. But also too, because it was my first time, I was trying to make something as simple as possible. Something that technically could like minimize my chance of fucking it up, you know? And so I was watching, there's a great short film called Thunder Road, which ended up winning Sundance. Jim Cummings did it, and it's one shot. He's the main character. He's literally the only character in it. There's no cuts. It's brilliant. But what it showed me is that it could be simple, but still really good. And then I was like, okay, great. So I don't need to have like a bunch of huge technical things going on. It really needs to be about the writing and the performance. And then I was watching the movie Heat one day, and you have the iconic scene in the diner with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. What struck me about it, though, is how simply shot that was. And so I just started thinking about some crazy dialogue between two mob-type characters. But then I had to figure out kind of like a why. Like, I can't just have them talking weird. What's the deal with it? And that's where the hook is in the second part of the film. But yeah, but more than anything, I wanted something simple that I could shoot, that it would minimize me screwing it all up. So...
Yeah, because it works really well. Because when I initially saw the film, I had no idea what it was about. I'd like heard of the synopsis. I was like, sounds cool, and it just went in a completely different direction. But it was played off really well. What plans do you have for like directing in the future, and where do you see yourself heading as an actor or a director, and balancing those two parts of your career?
It's funny. Mark actually wants to turn Crazy into a feature. Full-length, hour and a half movie, and so that's what he's really pushing me to do right now, which it's a little nerve-wracking. So, but he's constantly bugging me for new drafts and so forth and so on. So, yeah, it looks like we're going to turn that into a feature-length film. I've got another couple short films I'm going to direct as well too that Mark's going to help me with. Yeah, that's about that on the directing side, and I'll just kind of see where it goes. What's important for me is that I create something that is original and different, which I think Crazy was. I think one of the difficulties with Crazy was a few difficulties, but one was I hadn't really seen anything like it before. And then so when I'm talking to my crew ahead of time, no one really knew what the fuck I was talking about. Like everybody was like, what? And I go, yeah, I want this framed like a thriller, like these guys, like this is a Michael Mann film. Like I want like what would Fincher do here? And I'm like, yeah, but they're talking about dicks and stuff. I'm like, I get it. Forget that,
That's the point.
Yeah. And it wasn't until like halfway through day one that they all go, oh, now I get it. But up until then too, I was also like riddled with insecurity because I thought maybe this is just stupid. Maybe this is just the dumbest thing anybody's ever done. And I almost abandoned the concept for something just more traditional prior to doing it, even after I'd had the funding and stuff.
I mean, well, I'd say from what I've seen, you're like doing a great job at it, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future.
Thanks.
As you'd been like speaking about directing Crazy, you'd mentioned about how it was like a bit of an scary process, especially more so because you were acting in it at the same time. So how was balancing both those things, where like being on screen, but then also making sure that everything is going right the way you want to with it being shot?
Yeah, I didn't like it, to be honest with you, because I I really want to be on monitor to make sure that things are looking the way they need to look. What I did was, because it's so simple, there's not a lot of camera movement, I rehearsed the hell out of it with Brian, the guy who plays Monty. And I also made sure that we both kind of got the kind of performances that I wanted out of it. And then so on the day when we're on set, Mark was actually my stand-in. So Mark would sit, Markiplier would sit in my seat, and I would look at frame and go, okay, cool, this is the right framing. So I'm seeing Mark there, blah, blah, blah. And then so when we're ready to go, I'm like, all right, Mark, get up. And I would sit down. And then I just relied, Mark was watching the monitor, and I just relied on, then it's just the performance and the writing after that. And wanting to make sure that we kept it interesting and so forth and so on. And they were long takes, so I didn't have time to go back and watch the monitor again. Basically what we did is we shot the whole scene from all the angles that we shot it from. So you're talking about like 7.5 minutes per take. So I didn't have time to tell the crew, like, go out for a cigarette. I'm going to sit here and just watch the monitor. Okay, let's do Brian's coverage. Okay, go out, have another cigarette. I'm going to watch. I just had to kind of hope that it all came together. And I did not like that at all. But I can say, though, that Crazy, I got, exactly what I went out to do, if that makes sense. Lots of times you make compromises, especially with your first film, and I just got super lucky. It all kind of worked out in my favor, and I've had people ask me like, "Oh, how did you do it? Tell me how you did it." I'm like, "Man, I don't know that how I did it is the best way to do it. It's just, I don't know that luck wasn't equally involved in getting a decent product, at the end of the day."
Technically, it was a very daring move to have such a bold twist in a completely different scenario where it changes perspectives completely. So did you just trust yourself, or did you have someone or a group of people that you relied on for input?
Yeah, I just kind of trusted that I think this is going to work. I see it in my head. I feel like this is going to work. That even when I got the edit together, when I first saw the initial assembly, I was like, I think this is good. I think this is what but is it just me? Do I just have a stupid sense of humor? Is this like the dumbest thing ever? Is anybody going to like it? And I remember I sent it out to the UK Film Review, and those guys are notorious for being kind of harsh on films. And I had no clue what I was going to get back. And anyway, long story short is, they put a review up and gave it 5 stars and really liked it. And I ended up winning their festival that year. But until then, I had no confidence that this wasn't just some experimental piece that only I thought it was funny, kind of, that makes sense. So, because I didn't really have anything that was comparable to it that I could look at and go, it's a lot like this film here, it's a lot like that film there. And then even like the twist at the end, what was so super important is that when Monty looks up at the waitress, and then we cut to her and different location stuff, that everything matched and it wasn't given away, you know what I mean? And I needed the frame when we look back down at him and he's in a different location and different wardrobe that matched the diner shot of him. You know what I mean? So, and that was a bit challenging to get the framing just right on that. But I did. I trusted myself, and I'm not saying it wasn't a bold, courageous thing. I was scared to death that trusting myself was not the dumbest thing, especially when I had a lot of industry professionals kind of looking at me side-eyed like, really? This is what you want to do? I remember my cinematographer was like, okay, so we're going to go from like a Michael Mann movie into a Wes Anderson film. And I'm like, he's looking at me like, that's really what you want to do? And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. Right? That's what yes.
Just internally doubting yourself as you're speaking and like, is this really what I want to do?
Absolutely. I mean, I was second guessing myself a lot. And I can say after getting it all said and done, it gave me a lot of confidence that I need to trust myself more and take chances.
So that's what you're hoping to prove through your directing style, is what I'm assuming, that you don't want to just tell cliche stories. You want to show something that's actually moving, whether that be through the characters or the way that it's directed.
Correct. I mean, so many films nowadays, at the beginning who survives, who's going to win, the guy gets to go at the end.
You can predict a lot of stuff, especially
you still watch it really well done, but you kind of know what's going to happen. And one thing I've always liked about the Coen brothers, or even with Tarantino, like you never know what's going to happen, and then so you're forced to follow along to see where they're taking you, and that's kind of what I've always wanted to do.
Is there anything that you can reveal about the feature film or any other projects that you're currently working on, or is that under lock and key?
The feature film, I'm still working on drafts of it. I can't say I was really hesitant about making it a feature because the big aha moment is kind of already happened in the short.
Yeah.
And I had no idea where it could go possibly from there. And then Mark, he came down to Austin and we went, I think we sat at a Starbucks and he just threw up several options. I mean, he's a brilliant creative mind. Stuff I hadn't even thought about. And I'm like, oh crap, that could work. But my big challenge is trying to keep it as interesting and original throughout, so it doesn't just turn into like a generic storyline of that.
Yeah. So will it follow the same characters of Stanley and Monty, or do you want to expand into something like a greater narrative?
Yeah, it'll be a greater narrative because it's going to be much longer. It will, basically, the way it sits now is the short film will be the first few minutes of the feature. Spoilers, if you look at where they're at in the end of the film, that's kind of where the inciting action of the actual feature film takes place. They're denied. They're trying to get get released from where they're at and find a way out due to the help from Mark's character. And but one thing I did with Crazy is always kind of trying to toy with what reality was. And so I'm trying to. That is kind of my goal, to be able to do that for a longer period of time, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah. I love just personally speaking, I love the concept of not knowing what reality really is, and that's something that I struck a chord with in Crazy, because it's so interesting to know that you can play with different aspects of what real life is and what isn't in a film, because you can control it. And then you can like guide the audience to understanding what the characters see. So if that's the direction that you're going in with the feature film as well, that's something that I'm very interested in, because again, that's something that's very cool to me personally.
Yeah. And like I said too, I love films where you're trying to figure out where it's going
alongside the characters. Yeah,
you're engaged and interested enough to want to follow the characters.
What was it like to work with Mark, and how did that relationship go about?
It was great. I think I told you I did not know what a Markiplier was. I didn't know. When I first got a Heist with Markiplier, it was super secret. Like they wouldn't send script or even the name of it until I signed all these NDAs, and then I got the title Heist with Markiplier, and I had to Google what a Markiplier was.
Yeah.
And then I remember my daughter, my teenage daughter, was here, and I was like, "Hey," I just looked over from the computer. Do you know what Markiplier is? But it was like record scratch. She's like, yeah, he's a YouTuber. Why? I was like, oh, I'm fixing to go to work in a few hours with him. And she was just like, I mean, you would have thought I said, hey, I'm going to go work with Elvis. I mean, or I'm going to go. Yeah, it was just such a huge deal to her. And then so I went to work on Heist. We got along really great there. He was so nice. I told him my daughter was a fan. And then he shot a video there on set just saying hi and thanks for watching my videos. I didn't even ask him to do it.
Yeah.
Did it just to be nice. And then, I said we're at the wrap party and he's like, hey, let's shoot your movie. That sounds great. That doesn't just happen like that. You know what I mean? And then he flew down and just to be a part of the film and this little short movie from this guy that's never done it before, and was super helpful. And he's just a really good guy. And he's one of those guys that, throughout my career, I've worked with like Oscar winners, and I've worked with some amazing actors and people that I grew up watching. That's all cool. And some of them you're like, all right, dude, like not as much of a fan as I used to be. But Mark is one of those guys that I didn't know who the hell he was. And he's a brilliant creative mind. Because when we shot Heist, I didn't know exactly where it was going. I just shot like one scene with it. Then I get finished with Crazy and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. We go to watch the world premiere like in a theater of Heist. And Mark was, I felt so dumb that a guy that came up with all of those different possibilities and changes and endings and scenes and yada yada. And I'm thinking I'm a big shot because I shot this movie with two guys sitting at a table talking about dicks. But Mark's great. Mark's great. And he was super helpful. And I can't wait. We've got some other things we're talking about. Yeah, I love Mark to death. It sometimes brings me to tears. Just he took a shot on me for no reason, because it's not a YouTube project. It's not it doesn't fit within his brand at all. And just the fact that he wanted to help me do something because he believed in me for something with no benefit to him whatsoever. I mean, yeah, dude, like even like now, like it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's there was no benefit in him to do the stuff that he did other than just cool, man, let's do it. And even him wanting to turn Crazy into a feature, that's a big daunting task, and he wants to be the guy producing it and taking care of it. And I'm like, you want to do some short film stuff's a lot cheaper? And he's like, no, let's push Crazy. Let's again, there's no benefit to him other than being fucking cool. I mean, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure if you know this because you said that you were unfamiliar with YouTube and that generation of content, but a lot of people love your character especially. So what do you feel about that? Like the fact that your character has been able to resonate with so many people?
You know, I love it. I actually got some fan art. Like you know, I've been acting for 22 years or whatever, and 25 years, Jesus. You know, the whole YouTube aspect of things in Mark's fan base. One thing I was really worried about, I was worried because a lot of people had heard that, oh, Markiplier's in this movie.
Yeah.
Is it wasn't a traditional Markiplier product.
Yeah.
And he's just in it like for a second at the end. I was afraid that they would, because before it came out, oh my God, I've heard so much about this, blah, 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 and I saw some behind the scenes Markiplier's in it, that they'd see it and be just thoroughly disappointed. But, you know, going back to like Heist and Space and stuff, you know, it was so much fun to play, and I loved just how many of Mark's fans kind of embraced me, started following me on socials, and I've become, you know, friends with some of them as well too, just out of that never knew me, you know. And like I said, I got fan art about from both of my characters, you know what I mean. And so it was just I loved it. I mean, it was great, especially because so much of it was like he didn't have the, you know, the dumbass accent and stuff. That's not something that I was expected to do. That was just a character I kind of up and decided I wanted to do. And the majority of the dialogue, especially in Heist, was all made up. And, you know, there was a part where he gets my phone, and that was kind of like the beats we needed to hit. He needed to get my phone. Everything else was pretty much made up. And so the fact that people dug it was great. Like I love that.
But I can understand how that'd be very daunting, because you're going to this like massive fan base, all eyes are on you, and those eyes are coming over to your projects, which are your own. They are what you want to do, and you know that it's different from what Mark's projects are. So that must have been something, I imagine, very challenging, but the reception was amazing regardless, so it worked out.
I was so nervous about that. I was so nervous to be like, this is stupid, just two guys, man, Mark didn't show up to the end, you know, in that kind of thing. You know, it was funny too, because Mark he was in the hospital with some intestinal problems. And it's funny because he tweeted on the day that Crazy released, like online, I pooped. I think that was his tweet. And it's funny because his character, that's his line, is I have to poop. I have to poop. I was like, oh, thanks for the PR push, but
it was all staged. It was all fake. It was just it was just promotion for Crazy.
Intentional. But I was like, you went in the hospital and did all this stuff just for my film. Thank you.
Yeah,
no, but it was cool though, and like I said, I'm surprised and pleased and just so happy that you know, his fan base just one, didn't crucify me, but then two, was happy with the project.
What would you say to other people that struggle with that same idea, where they want to tell a story that they know is daring, or they want to pursue something in the filmmaking aspect, but they doubt the fact that they'll be able to do it? What would you have, if you could, say to them right now, if you had the chance?
Yeah, I say, you know, one thing I've learned, you know, I'm old. I didn't know what a Markiplier was before I worked with him. I didn't know he's a YouTuber. That's not my generation. You know, now people are making movies on iPhones, and there's so many possibilities and things that I didn't have growing up. You know, when I first started acting, it was on film, and digital was coming in, and I was like, I don't know about all that stuff. And but I say now, like, take chances and go. And you know, one thing that gave me some confidence is, again, I shot it on my iPhone first in my living room, and just cut that together, just to say, hey, does the story make sense? But just take a shot, and you know, and listen to yourself and kind of what you want to do. I think that's more than anything. Is just really, like, listen to yourself and kind of go with what you think works for you. I think you have to listen to your own sensibilities first versus what you think other people are going to like, because that's kind of the baseline of what makes you, whoever you are. And so, I think that's the biggest thing, is kind of go with what you would like and find the most interesting way to tell that story.
To wrap things up with what I promised at the very start, here's some more information I'd like to add to Markiplier's ever-growing list of projects currently in production. The artist and designer that had worked on In Space with Markiplier posted these stories on her public Instagram account, which seemingly confirms how she's on the set of Mark's film. This also means that Mark must have paired up with his old crew for this new challenge, which is an extremely wholesome fact. While not discussed with Holt, I hope this means we'll get to see him again too. And speaking of which, that concludes my interview with him. There are some things we discussed about what went behind the scenes of Space that I haven't included. But that is simply due to how I'll be merging those additional tidbits of his with a very special video coming up in time for an awaited anniversary. Yeah, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Until then though, I can't thank Holt enough for speaking with me. I wish him the best of luck with what he hopes to achieve in the future. Safe to say, I'll be on board for whatever project he tackles next. Please, if you haven't already, show this talented man some support. His movie is more than worth watching and the humor can still be enjoyed on second and even third rewatches regardless of whether you know about the twist ending or not. It's clear that he has a lot of entertainment to offer and the world deserves to see it. I've linked his socials in the description as well, so do send him my regards. If you're watching this from the future, then the video I just teased should be showing up on screen. If not, I bet it's one that is equally enjoyable. Give it a watch, I bet you won't be disappointed. This has been Vexodus though, and see ya.